We are less than 2 hours away from the first presidential debate between President Trump and Democratic nominee Joe Biden. For a preview, let's bring in Leslie Sanchez and Joel Payne. Leslie is a CBS News political analyst, and Joel is a CBS News political contributor and Democratic strategist. Welcome. It is really good to see you both. Leslie, let's start with you. President Trump is facing scrutiny for his handling of the pandemic and the recent New York Times report on his taxes. Can the president redirect the conversation away from his record? And if so, what do you think he's going to focus on to make his case for re-election?
Definitely, we can expect the president is going to come out strong in this debate. And it's interesting, Elaine, if we think back to 2016, the first debate with Trump and then Hillary Clinton, 84 million people watched that. It was the highest rated presidential debate going back to 1980. And a lot of it had to do with there was a known commodity in Hillary Clinton. People either liked her, she had very high negatives at the time. This is a different contrast of style and a different contrast of experience. And there's a lot of people who've already made up their mind and kind of that aura around Trump. But what's interesting to compare is he was on his heels in that first debate. He was not prepared. He did not take it as seriously and very much a repeat of what we're hearing he's going into today. But he did talk about law and order. He did talk about he didn't want to present his taxes and defended that. So some of those echoed themes will be what you hear this time. And he's also going to try to make this case that he's done an exceptional job on managing the pandemic. That's extremely debatable. Biden's going to have a lot of opportunity to respond to that, but that's going to be the direction we expect.
Well, Joel, Joe Biden and his running mate, Senator Kamala Harris, released their 2019 tax returns earlier today. What message is the Biden campaign sending to voters ahead of tonight's debate?
Well, look, that move is about accountability, showing that Joe Biden wants to demonstrate that accountability. But also, I think it's about contrast. I think he wants to create a storyline, a narrative that Chris Wallace, the moderator for tonight, is going to have to address Donald Trump's tax returns. And that is certainly going to be a prime issue tonight. I think you don't have to be a political scientist to know that. Something else I would expect tonight as well is really a lot of focus around coronavirus. I've been arguing the more Joe Biden is able to force discussion around coronavirus, the better it is for he and his campaign. I think every day Donald Trump has to talk about coronavirus, has to account for the shortcomings and the failings of this administration around coronavirus. I think that's a loser for him. And so I think as much as Biden, even the tertiary issues, the tax returns, some of the ugly things that Donald Trump has said, if he can turn those things back to focus on Donald Trump being not up to the task of managing the country at this moment, I think that's ultimately going to be a win for Joe Biden.
You know, Leslie, I'm curious if you think that the president will try to define Joe Biden throughout the course of this debate, because we've seen the president in the past really try to cast Joe Biden in many different ways as a socialist. He's described him as. And I wonder, though, given the fact that Joe Biden is someone with a record in office, what do you think is actually going to be the strategy here when it comes to, you know, the president characterizing his opponent? How would you describe, first of all, his debate style?
The president's style is rough and tumble. It's politics of personal destruction, politics of personal attack, anything that would not be, you know, kind of considered the norm in any type of presidential politics is hitting under the belt is definitely the president's approach. He's going to talk about Biden's cognitive ability. He's hinted at that several times. He'll allude to the fact that he does unscrupulous things and benefits his own personal pocketbook. Now you're going to have a lot of people saying, you know, pot calling the kettle black, especially when you've got so many people in your family working within the White House. So whether those positions and those attacks actually land is another story, but we've seen that consistently. And I will say one thing, pulling off what Joel just said when he said, you know, Biden talking about the coronavirus, and Biden could talk about those taxes all day. People, I believe, in many ways have made up their mind on that side. They're going to be looking at this, I think, for the voters that are listening acutely, that the few that are left that still need to make up their mind on how this affects them going forward in the next 4 years, their personal pocketbook, them getting their children back to school safely, getting back, you know, the economy moving again. If that economic message holds true, the president's going to be trying to move in that direction about keeping America strong despite these setbacks.
You know, Joel, Leslie brings up the point that President Trump has, repeatedly tried to cast Joe Biden as, incompetent or even senile. And I wonder how much you think is actually riding on Joe Biden's performance, because that has been a line of attack that we've seen over and over from President Trump.
Boy, in our business, Elaine, we call that leading with the chin. Donald Trump would certainly be leading with the chin if he did that, considering some of his public moments lately, some of things that have been well documented that the president has said, ways he's acted, things that have happened behind the scenes in his White House. So I would really be careful about advancing that storyline if I was the president. Look, in regards to Joe Biden, I've consistently said Joe Biden had to give essentially 7 or 8 good hours between cinching up the nomination and now. And he did that when he cinched up South Carolina, when he had the DNC speech, when he had the debates with Bernie Sanders. He's met the moment at every one of those challenges. And I think with each time he's met the moment, I think it's really elevated the confidence that a lot of Democrats have had in him to do that. This campaign cycle in a lot of ways has come to Joe Biden. If he had to do a 50,000 person rally every day, that wouldn't really play to his strong suit. The fact that it has been kind of a slimmed down campaign season, I do think has helped Joe Biden. And I do think he will be able to meet the moment tonight and going forward, because he's demonstrated that he's been able to do that. And I think Democrats feel pretty confident going into this evening.
You know, Joel, it would not be surprising if President Trump attacked Joe Biden's son over his work for a Ukrainian gas company. What will you be looking for if that in fact comes up when it comes to Joe Biden's response to this?
I remember a moment during the primary season, and Elaine, you may remember this as well. There was a man, I believe it was in Pennsylvania, who questioned Joe Biden, maybe around a similar issue, and he had a very strong, visceral response. And I think the reason why that registered well with so many voters is because it was genuine. I think as long as Joe Biden is genuine, whatever the response is, it will come off well. And I think the American people will accept it. And I think it will be helpful to him. If the response seems too canned, or if it doesn't seem like it is appropriate for the moment, I think that's where you get in the problems. If you're Joe Biden, Donald Trump, any politician. So if Joe Biden can demonstrate genuine reaction to whether it's the president name calling or some question that might be a curveball from the moderator, I think that voters understand who he is. They understand his core. And he's withstood about 18 months of consistent attacks on this issue. And his numbers have been pretty stubborn. So I wouldn't expect anything to cause a sea change in that tonight.
Right, Leslie, the Supreme Court, of course, is another topic. President Trump's nominee, Amy Coney Barrett, is meeting with lawmakers on Capitol Hill this week. Republicans have been pushing to fast-track her confirmation, but Democrats have pointed to 2016 when the GOP blocked President Obama's nominee, Merrick Garland. Leslie, what are we likely to hear from the president about the Supreme Court?
He's going to say it's a critical moment in time, that he has a responsibility to nominate, put forward, and that he's going to leave that up to the Senate, right? It's an indicator of what he said in the past. And the Senate has said they're going to take up this responsibility as soon as possible. But this is that crystal clear issue. Everything from civil liberties, religious liberties, kind of the liberty argument for many social conservatives that lifts the fog around whether or not, they were going to kind of look at voting for Joe Biden in this election because they're frustrated with the president, and really get out to vote and mobilize them. And even if they had thought they would sit on their hands and kind of see what happens, this is one of those activation issues. So I expect the president is going to continue to push on that, and he's going to draw that contrast of the alternative. If he were not there, this is what would happen. The irony, though, is that in most cases, historically, you will not see a president have 3 nominees in their first term. So it may balance out. It would balance out if there was a second term. There wouldn't be, expected to have another change. But right at this moment, it's an opportunity for the president to show his conservative side.
All right, Leslie Sanchez and Joel Payne, so wonderful to see you both. I wish we could be all together in the broadcast center, but it is wonderful at least to see you via Skype here. Thank you.